Hello, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. We're expecting a number of other people to be joining, but we have a lot to cover. Excited to have you here with us. So, welcome to our Lyme Recovery Event as part of Lyme Awareness or Lyme Recovery Month. So, thinking about Lyme recovery going beyond just awareness and really having a focus on returning our health to the life that we once enjoyed before Lyme. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Scott Forsgren, also known as the Better Health Guy. I've been an advocate of light, sound, frequency, vibrational tools for many years, and fortunately have collaborated with the We Are Nikki team for about 8 years now. Initially, my support group in Northern California at the time had the opportunity to host them at several of our meetings as they were evolving the technology. And I've used now the Wave Force one, the Wave one, and now the Nikki. I created the website betterhealthguy.com as well, the podcast Better Health Guy blogcast, really to share my personal journey with more than 25 years of dealing with Lyme disease and mold illness and all of those things that come with it. And so I do use the stress and anxiety program whenever I'm doing a podcast and hoping that that makes things go as smoothly as possible. And I continue to use the tools that are provided by the We Are Nikki team on a regular basis, almost every day. It's rare that I'm not using them to really maintain my health after many years, like I said, more than 25 years of dealing with chronic Lyme disease and all the things that came with it. So we're excited to have you here today as we talk with Dr. Tracey Stroup, Dr. Jaquel Patterson. We have several special guests as well that are going to talk with us about their experience using the Nikki technology. So we're going to dive in and explore the application of light and frequency and how that might help those of us dealing with Lyme disease to improve the quality of our lives. And then we're also going to get some unique insights from Dr. Tracey and Dr. Jaquel as well on some very interesting topics. So yes, we'll talk about Nikki, but we're going to weave in some things that hopefully you'll be interested as well. So for our kind of agenda, we're going to have both of the doctors. We'll do some Q&A with them. We're then going to talk with the Nikki team about the vagus nerve program. We're also going to talk to a few users of the Nikki technology and hear their stories. And I actually had the opportunity to talk with a few of them this week and was really super impressed. I mean, I knew the power of this technology, but I think you will be really excited and hopeful with their stories. So if you do have any questions for any of our panelists, please go ahead and use the Q&A feature here in Zoom. If there are questions that you see that you're really excited about, please go ahead and upvote those. So if we don't have enough time to get to all of them, we'll try to get to the ones that are of most interest to everyone that's here on the call. So if your question is for a specific panelist, please note that in your question as well, so that when we kind of ask those questions, we know who to direct them to. And if you stay until the end of our Lyme recovery event, you'll also have the opportunity to win the drawing for a new Nikki Lyme device that will also have the vagus nerve program that we're going to talk about. And then we'll also have a discount code for people that want to purchase your own Nikki device. So with that, thank you for being here again, everyone. And now we're going to start with talking to Dr. Tracey. She is a naturopathic doctor in Pennsylvania who works with chronic Lyme and other complex chronic conditions. She's been practicing for 27 years and really works in that complementary integrative medicine realm. And she, fortunately for us, recognizes that Lyme disease is more than just Lyme and that a holistic approach is necessary to help patients heal. That could be both in terms of exploring the potential contributors, but also in terms of the many interventions in her very broad toolbox. So with that, Dr. Tracey, talk to us about the types of patients that you work with. Are you working with adults? Are you working with children? And do you see acute Lyme disease in your office, or are all of your patients with Lyme already in a more chronic stage?
Well, that's a loaded question, huh? Actually, thank you so much for having me here, and I'm super excited. And for all the attendees, this is going to be just such an incredible hour to an hour and a half where we get to spend together. So thank you for hosting this. Absolutely, I see both adults and children in my practice, but the majority of my Lyme patients are already in the chronic disease stage. So by the time they get to me, they've been through the ringer, years of symptoms, misdiagnosis, or even short-term interventions that never really got to the root. So I often say that Lyme disease rarely travels alone. It usually has a gang involved, co-infections, mold, parasites, viral reactivations. And of course, there is the emotional, environmental components of it that both are contributing to, the degradation of the body. So that's why we don't just look at Lyme. We look at the entire terrain of the person in my practice and also approach it from the emotional, spiritual, and physical.
So let's talk then a little bit more about your work with children. When you're working with a child with Lyme, how do they present in terms of their symptoms? What are some of the conditions that maybe they have where Lyme is a component? And then talk to us about some of the tools that you're most drawn to for the pediatric population. And then kind of building on that, wondering if you find that children recover more quickly and maybe even more durably because they still have more vitality, more vital force, and maybe less environmental toxicant accumulation.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. Absolutely. Children often present different than adults, where an adult might say, I have joint pain. A child might show up with behavior issues, fatigue, gut complaints, even sensory issues or sensitivities. Some are misdiagnosed with ADHD. They can also present PANS pandas. So it really depends on how that's manifesting physically and if they're in front of the right practitioner that's going to explore from the neck down rather than just trying to say that it's some sort of behavior or mental issue. So it's really at the core inflammation from the chronic infection. And so with kids, I focus on gut, I focus on immune modulation. I love to utilize gentle detox with kids because their bodies actually are, as you said, full of that vital force. And so they respond very quickly to protocols from what I've seen. I love using homeopathy, structured silver, gentle botanicals, and I truly love using the Nikki watch because it has a very high compliancy, it's easy to use, and it's something that parents don't have to fight with their kids about using or doing. So, as you said, Scott, they haven't accumulated much toxic burden up to this point. And so their vital force is still stronger, but we still have to be careful as not to overwhelm them because their systems do tend to be more sensitive.
There you go, teasing us with that broad toolbox of wonderful, fun things that you have to help support your patients. So you mentioned the Nikki. We know that there was a release of the vagus nerve program recently. We're going to talk a little more about that later, but let's talk from your perspective about the importance of the vagus nerve and the link between the vagus nerve and Lyme disease. So kind of thinking of two directions here. First, do chronic infections directly impact the vagus nerve? And then from the other side, if someone has low vagal tone, they're stuck in a sympathetic dominant state, does that potentially mean they have less ability or capacity for healing if they can't calm the nervous system? And then building on that, if we're consistently in a sympathetic dominant state, does that then impact your ability to be successful in addressing the microbial burden?
Yes. So chronic infections love the vagus nerve. Borrelia, for instance, it'll disrupt the autonomic balance. It keeps the patient stuck in fight or flight. And when you're stuck in a sympathetic dominance, which is what fight or flight is, healing is almost nearly impossible. So taking all the right supplements obviously is great, but if the nervous system doesn't feel safe, then your body won't prioritize repair. It's prioritizing survival. And so people with chronic infection and or Lyme, they get stuck in a survival state where they get just so far, but it's not full and healthy recovery. So when we support that vagal tone through things like even breath work, any type of the Nikki vagus protocol, which is going to help with that, also with mitochondrial regeneration, respiration, it's foundational and it's going to create a space for the vagus nerve to come back into balance and also a space for healing. I think it's essential that we get the emotional component or stimulation of the emotional component under control to calm that, it is part of it. And I think it's a huge part that's missing in the allopathic model, where everything is essentially physical, and nothing against allopathic, but they know what they know. And once you kind of enter over into our space where it's more integrative care with the spirit, the emotions, the mental, and the physical, you see massive changes. And with the development of this vagus protocol on the Nikki Watch, I think it's going to help really revolutionize people's health.
So we've talked a little bit in prior conversations about the emotional aspect of this, and I am going to get into that with you in just a moment. But since we're on the topic of the vagus nerve, I want to talk about what you've observed in terms of how that connects into other aspects of Lyme disease. So does it play a role in systemic inflammation? Does it play a role in autoimmunity? Does it play a role in mast cell activation syndrome? Can we actually calm down inflammation, calm down immune hypervigilance, calm down mast cell activation with a focus on tonification of the vagus nerve?
In my experience, absolutely yes. I always say the vagus nerve is like the CEO of the parasympathetic nervous system, and that is your rest and digest. So if it is out of whack, out of control, or being instigated by some sort of infection, it's not going to be able to keep everybody in the right place and space and under control. So when we look at what does this system control in general, it's controlling chronic inflammation, digestion, immune balance. So when you have low vagal tone, you're going to have increased inflammation. You're going to have exasperated issues such as mast cell activation. And just for people listening, mast cells are a different type of immune cell. They are a connective tissue immune cell. They're not like your white blood cells. So anything from the air outside to someone touching your skin can activate and anger these mast cells. And it is extremely uncomfortable. We see it starting with histamine response and then moving into even just sound, smells can activate mast cells. It's very, very particular. So in my experience, I really feel that improving the vagal tone can reduce the intensity of these flares. It can also improve the tolerance to whatever other protocol you're utilizing in regards to the Nikki Watch. And then it can help stabilize mood and digestion so that you can assimilate and absorb nutrition that your body desperately needs so that it can create new and healthy cells. So it's very powerful.
I did an interview recently with another practitioner, and one of her top tips, she said, we all need to go to Vegas. And it took a minute, I think, for people to recognize that she meant the vagus nerve. So let's go a little bit further than the vagus nerve and talk about the mental, emotional realities of chronic disease. So maybe we had emotional traumas and conflicts that preceded the illness or set the stage for the illness. But
Yeah.
talk to us about how the illness itself can potentially create a PTSD itself, where the illness becomes the trauma. And then wondering if you find that patients that have been ill for so long that it's difficult for them to regain trust in their bodies and resonate with the feeling of safety.
Yeah, absolutely. Chronic illness in itself is trauma. So, for people listening, I've had my own experience in 2016 with chronic illness and overcame it. But the overcoming of that physically took about 2 years. Emotionally, it probably took about five. And even now, if I get triggered by something, I can still feel that emotional flare. So, I want people to understand that they're not crazy. And I think so many people have been dismissed, gaslit, and told it was all in their head, that there's a level of distrust when they're working with somebody, but also a feeling of, oh my gosh, what if this happens again? And just those words, you're not crazy and I hear you, can literally bring people to tears. And not because they're upset, but mostly because they're in a safe space. So it's essential, I feel, that we rebuild trust, create a safe space for these people so that they can come in, heal physically, but also heal emotionally. And we have to approach it from every level. It's no longer an option to talk about emotions or mental health within our sessions. It's something that, and I know Dr. Jaquel is going to talk about this. It's essential in the healing when we look at chronic illness because there is a PTSD associated with it and it needs to be addressed in our practices. And if we're not the expert, then we need to find a network of people who are and can support our patients in that area.
And I would say that's one of the big takeaways already, that if we're dealing with something like chronic Lyme, that focusing solely on the physical body is probably not going to be the optimal path back towards better health. So let's talk a little bit about your experience with the Nikki technology, how that's played a role in your clinical practice with patients. What are some of the frequency enhanced programs on the Nikki that you're finding most helpful for patients? And then how does it also help to address the compliance aspect or difficulty in managing really large protocols, which we all have probably been on at one time or another?
Yeah, the protocols can get far and wide. I usually tell people we're going to take a trip down protocol lane and then we're going to come back to the narrow path. So, Nikki has truly been a game changer for my people that utilize it. Patients with chronic illness, they often have what I call protocol fatigue. The supplement gets really long and then the detox symptoms come, they get super overwhelmed, their nervous system gets tapped out. So what the Nikki has done has given me options which I can help my patients through when it comes to emotions, when it comes to sleep, when it comes now to the vagus nerve. It offers something else outside of a pill for every ill in a very vast and wide protocol. The Lyme Daily, the pain, the sleep, the histamine, the emotion, all of these have been so gentle, non-invasive. People really enjoy them because it's tangible. They can touch it, they can feel it, they know that they're in control of something. It gives them this sense of they're doing something, but they don't have to take something to do it. So, and it's portable. So it improves compliance significantly. They can run their Lyme or their Vegas program while resting, sleeping, working. So it's just more about convenience and compliancy, also empowering that patient to have something tangible that they control, and it's another tool that they know that they can utilize to take their health back.
Beautiful. So, since we're talking about Lyme Recovery Month, what are some words of hope that you can give to listeners that are still struggling with chronic Lyme disease to help them, no
Mm.
pun intended, but resonate with the frequency of a recovery?
Yeah, I always tell my patients, I believe God still heals, but sometimes it's just in time. And patience is one of the hardest things that we have to give to our people, and hope. These people have been sick for so long, and I do understand that. But healing is not linear, but it is possible. So I've seen people who were bedridden, forgotten, hopeless, just didn't want to do one more protocol, couldn't. I've seen people financially distraught, have no more money left for anything. And what I've noticed is with the Nikki, in conjunction with the protocols that we're doing now, they're starting to get their lives back. Not overnight, not without effort, but through a process of supporting the body, supporting the emotions, supporting the soul. There's no magic pill. I wish I had it, but there's not. But there is a path. So we just have to walk that path one step at a time. But just know that with all these people here tonight and what the entire staff at Nikki is doing, you don't have to walk this alone anymore. So I hope that's what they take from this entire webinar series.
Amazing. Love that, Dr. Tracey. Thank you so much. Why don't you tell us your website? Because I'm guessing a lot of people now are going to also want to potentially work with you.
It's really tough. It's my name. So it's just www.traceystroup.nd as in naturopathic doctor.com. So they can contact.
Excellent.
All right. Well,
All
thank you,
right.
Scott.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Please remember everyone to submit any questions you may have for Dr. Tracey in the Q&A. We'll get to those as much as possible at the end of our conversation. So next we're going to hear from Dr. Tracey's patient, Lene. So Lene, thank you so much for being here. And wondered if you could first talk to us about when you first heard about the Nikki device. What was your initial thought when someone suggested it for you? Were you a believer? Were you totally on board? Were you skeptical? And if you weren't a believer, at what point did you start to observe that the technology might be helping you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Yes, so when I first heard about the watch, I just remember thinking, how can a watch make me feel better? I've taken what felt like hundreds of pills, done all of these things, and spent all of this money and didn't feel well. And I actually won a Nikki watch. So um, it was fantastic. And so I put it on, I thought, okay, well, give it a try, see if it works. Um, and I would say within 30 days, I started to notice little changes. And I remember at first thinking, maybe this is in my head. Do I really feel better? Does a watch really make me feel better? Um, but the more I've worn it, the better I felt. I would say I'm on around day 75. And I think it's been maybe 10 days since I've taken a sleep medication, which for me is that's a win for me. And I've been able to sleep through the night. I feel better. My stomach is calmer. Um, I run the Lyme daily every day, and then I run the gut health every day, and then the sleep at night. Um, but yes, I've seen great improvements.
So I think you covered quite a bit of what we were hoping to talk about. I remember talking with you previously that you were rather skeptical at the beginning and that you saw changes after about 3 weeks. I remember you saying it seemed bizarre that a watch could help, but it
Hmm.
did. So you also talked a little bit about how Lyme patients are really desperate and looking for somebody to help. So wondering, was there a point in your use of the Nikki where you saw some positive shifts that also maybe helped lessen your anxiety about being able to recover your health?
I remember around day 40 saying to my husband, I can't believe this thing works. I'm feeling better. Um, for so long, you're told as a Lyme patient, try this, try that, don't eat that, eat this, sleep these times. And it's so overwhelming when you don't feel well to implement all of these things, but to be able to just put something on my wrist, and it sounds hard to believe, but it's true, that makes you feel better is just it's amazing, and it's a wonderful thing. And I hope that if there's somebody watching this or listening that is just feels at the end of things, because there were several times I did, but to know that they can try something new and that there is hope and that you can recover.
Love that. And you are fortunate because you have Dr. Tracey as your
Mhm.
practitioner, which is wonderful. So Dr. Tracey paired with a Nikki, that sounds pretty great. So thank you so much, Lenny, for sharing your
Thank
experience with
you.
us today. We greatly appreciate it. Very, very happy for you as well. Now we're going to talk with Dr. Jaquel Patterson, who's a naturopathic physician from Connecticut. We know what Connecticut means. That is Lyme arena there. So she's been treating patients for about 16 years, and she authored the book Women and Lyme, an integrative guide to better health. She also has a focus on both Lyme, but also on integrative psychiatry, which is very interesting. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. So Dr. Patterson, with your background in integrative psychiatry, more that mental emotional realm, how much of a psychiatric presentation is mental emotional versus being driven by infection, environmental toxicity, neuroinflammation? And then maybe just give us at a very high level how you explore what might be driving a patient's psychiatric symptoms, What are some of the common infections or toxicities that you see that might be underlying those conditions? And how do you approach helping a patient to move past them?
Glad to be here. So, why I started actually have a background in getting additional training in functional medicine for integrative psychiatry, and the primary reason I started doing it was because I found a lot of the patients I was treating with Lyme disease and other tick-borne infections, especially things like Bartonella, the co-infections, and Babesia, there were significant mental health manifestations or aggravations. I myself had Lyme disease, Bartonella, but Babesia was probably my worst with the symptoms of anxiety and OCD. And I had found some people when I was working with them, it was their first onset of anxiety where they had no history of it before. Or I saw people that were like me that had potentially, a past history of it, but they said things like the same thing I said, this feels different. This doesn't feel like the same level of anxiety or depression or mood dysregulation than what I had before. I remember for me, I'd say I'm in the grocery store and I would be drenched and I'm like, there's nothing in the grocery store that would make me that nervous. And so because of that, I started we get trained generally as naturopathic doctors on mental health, integrative medicine, lifestyle, and some things to do. But I felt like I wanted to get just a deeper level of training because so many patients were struggling with that issue. And so um, I think it's a combination of both. I've had some people that, as I said, a first event where they've been hospitalized only to find out after being at the hospital a couple days that they actually had a tick-borne infection, and that's what was the cause of their mental health issues, like complete changes where they didn't want to be around their family, they didn't want to be here anymore, just these things that they never exhibited at all before in their life. And so there's just been, so because of that, I started diving deep and seeing what the connection was. What are tick-borne infections to the actual brain, and seeing these effects with things like neuroinflammation, where the blood-brain barrier gets impacted, the microglia get activated, and it actually affects very specific parts of the brain that are the same areas of the brain that are affected in depression and anxiety, like the amygdala, which is your emotional center, like the hippocampus, which is memory. And we see a lot of people with tick-borne infections start having short-term memory issues or brain fog. The prefrontal cortex, which is the area to make decisions, and so there's lack of an ability to even make basic decisions or say words, say things out of their mouth that they know is in their head that they can't say anymore. So there's just this big overlap that I saw of either worsening or first-time symptoms, and seeing the connection with the inflammation and its role in affecting mental health conditions.
I think speaking of decisions, I think the We Are Nikki team made a great decision having these two incredible practitioners with us today, because I think we're learning some great things. One of the things that we talked about as we were preparing for this conversation was you have observed differences in testing for Lyme disease in women. So wondering if you could talk to us a little about that. And then once we understand that, what are some of your favorite labs to explore vector-borne infections?
Yeah, so if you see in terms of some of the studies, they have shown that for first of all, we already know the conventional labs are faulty, about 58% false negative. So right there off the bat, we know many people are not actually going to be diagnosed that should be diagnosed. And oftentimes they're doing a test like the ELISA, they're not doing the Western blot, even when they're looking at that. And what makes it even harder for women is that in the studies they showed men can show 6 for IgG bands that are positive as compared to women, which is on average 4. And in order to be tested considered positive for a diagnosis, you have to have 5 bands. So right there, many women are just kind of not only again the testing being faulty, and still regardless per CDC, it is still a clinical diagnosis, but many people make the decision purely based on the lab test. And so because right there off the bat, a lot of women, those statistics are even worse. And if you look at the Lyme data, also women, about 83% of the population that struggles with chronic Lyme are women. So it's definitely more dominant. And I think one of the reasons is that unfortunately it might be written off as hormonal issues. It's written off you're really stressed, you have a lot on your plate. And so these things it doesn't get worked up, and they might see 10 to 12 doctors before anyone is actually even testing. And if they do test, the testing is faulty in general, and even worse for women. So that is one of the challenges I see, is that many of the women that I see have seen a lot more doctors or have dealt with having the Lyme disease for a much longer period of time.
And then are there some key laboratories that you're
Mhm.
drawn to for
Oh,
vector-borne
yes.
infection testing?
Yeah, so the ones I like, so there's several different ones. IGeneX is one that's great. It does what's called indirect testing and direct testing. So indirect testing are things like the Western blot that I mentioned, ELISA, and then the direct testing is actually checking to see how many, antibodies are in the blood, and that's things like FISH testing or PCR testing. Now, just to note with that, about 15% of people don't actually produce enough antibodies to show positive too in the test. So that's really critically important to know, especially if a patient has an autoimmune condition or is on an immunosuppressant. If you're on an immunosuppressant, you might not even produce enough antibodies in even the regular indirect testing to show. So I like IGeneX. Vibrant is another one. Galaxy we often use for things like Bartonella, and also like InfectoLab. So those are some of the more common ones I would say I look at. IGeneX was one of the ones earlier in the game, so a lot of people know about them, but we're always trying to factor that out with cost as well.
Yeah, that's great. So you mentioned hormones, and I know you have a passion for deeply looking into hormones as a contributor to the patient that's in front of you. So what kind of patterns do you see when you're testing hormones? What are some symptoms that might clue us into hormonal dysregulation? And then just bringing in the concept of the cell danger response, where the body may be intelligently down regulating our metabolism, thyroid, testosterone, some of those
Mhm.
things. Do you generally find that we need to address the triggers of the cell danger response first, or can we start hormonal support early in the process?
Yes, I personally do them usually both at the same time, especially if you see an issue with the hormones early on. Particularly, I find for like my menopausal women where they're having this drop in hormones and they might need a lot more hormonal support through that. One of the issues with any kind of inflammation or infection, it's going to disrupt everything. It's going to disrupt the ability for the thyroid to function properly. It's going to cause issues with your, cortisol. Cortisol dysregulation will make it even harder to accept like antimicrobials as well. So all of those pieces, have to be looked at. But the reason I actually started looking at hormones was kind of the same reason how as I got into more mental health for my patients. It always comes to me. And so what would happen was I would see women and they were going through these kind of different cycles. I saw the same for some of my autoimmune patients where they were good, then they started going through menopause and the symptoms were way worse, or they were like, "Oh, I'm good for 2 or 3 weeks of the month, and then 1 week I'm bad." And so I started seeing this connection, like why is it that they're feeling worse at certain times of the month? And so what I found was when I supported their hormones, they were able to kind of keep steady in managing their symptoms with Lyme, that they weren't having a flare. And again, that got me to dive deeper into hormones and seeing things like testosterone or progesterone. Those are all anti-inflammatory. Estrogen is also supportive for the immune system, but in too high of amounts, those are pro-inflammatory. Learning about things like prostaglandins that get released, a week before the cycle, which increases all our inflammatory mediators, which then causes flares to be worse. So seeing all that connection, there wasn't really any content out there about hormones, about the endocrine system, about the adrenals, how they get impacted from these tick-borne infections. And so that's what propelled me to write the book, The Women and Lyme, because I felt like there just needed to be more education of looking at that person holistically, because even folks that are in the world of like Lyme literate providers, you might still just look at let's combat the infection and not looking at all of the other factors. If your adrenal glands are not regulated well, you're not going to receive of the, let's say, antibiotics as well as antimicrobials. If your hormones are not balanced or the hormones are going down, do they need to be on hormone support or even things like bioidentical hormone replacement if it's too significant, so that they can better receive the treatment you're giving them? So it's just making sure we go back, and that's how we're trained as naturopathic doctors, looking at the person in their full entirety, not just one piece of it.
So good. So you not only wrote one book, but then you wrote another book, which is Long COVID and
I
Beyond.
think
I
I
think
was bored during COVID.
I mean, this is such a big topic. The number of people impacted by long COVID is huge, as you well know. So, what have you seen in the era of COVID in terms of people having yet another chronic or long-term aspect to their condition? Wondering if you feel that some people may have viral persistence of SARS-CoV-2
Mhm.
in some cases, or are we thinking more that the COVID virus was the great unmasker and reactivating things like EBV and Bartonella and Mycoplasma? How do you see long COVID? And then what's your general high level approach to
Mhm.
treating it in the context of someone also dealing with Lyme disease?
Yes, I've seen personally in clinical practice more of the unmasking of other infections, but I might also be biased in the patients that are coming to see me, mostly with tick-borne infections or viruses like EBV or PANS and PANDAS. So what would happen is when COVID happened, even with myself after getting COVID, I remember my first patient that came in had COVID in 2020 and hadn't seen in like a year and a half. And when he had the symptoms of Lyme disease, he had Bell's palsy, a whole bunch of neurological symptoms, fatigue, joint pain, etc. Hadn't seen him in a year and a half because it was good, asymptomatic, etc. Gets COVID, and 3 days later, he writes saying, "I feel like I got Lyme disease all over again." Like as soon as he got it, he said it felt like all the same symptoms, even down to the point of Bell's palsy. And so we tested, and all the Lyme, all the infections were like through the roof, and the CRP was up, all inflammatory mediators. So all I did was put that person like on Lyme protocol. 3 or 4 weeks later, he was back to normal. So what I saw from that, I started testing my patients then after that of like people that were having these long COVID symptoms that like they were like I felt okay, and then 3 or 4 weeks later I'm still dragging. Or I'm feeling like I have the things I had before. And sure enough, finding a lot of these, like the antibody count would like go up significantly higher. CRP was up. Iron was impacted. Ferritin is an acute inflammatory marker. So you would see that go up and then drop down. And so when I supported that, then they would get back, to their to what was normal for them. But I also have seen people that just purely like they feel like all their symptoms began, like they had long COVID and then they might have gotten Lyme 3 years later, and that just like heightened it, but they were already at a weak point from before. So I've seen it both ways. But I've definitely have seen like the unmasking of many things, even like ANAs, autoimmune markers, tripling, once they got COVID and seeing their autoimmune condition get worse as well.
Have you seen some people where long COVID unmasked the fact that they were living in a moldy environment?
Yeah, and also, yes, I've seen that, or I've seen mold also preventing them from recovering as well as fast because it's also an immunosuppressant. So also working to support the environment they're in, or seeing them take longer to get well, like treatment taking a lot longer because their immune system is dysregulated.
So let's talk now about your experience with the Nikki, how you're using it in your clinical practice. What are some of your favorite programs, and what are your patients experiencing thus
Mhm.
far?
From the patients I've had with the ones that, and I think it's because with Lyme, there's a lot of, and I know Dr. Tracey talked about it a little bit earlier, is there also that a mental emotional component, and that we talked about like mental health, but there's also the emotional component when people start getting like well and supportive. So I've seen my patients use the stress and anxiety and more of the emotions functions for on Nikki that have helped them to I've seen that more common than the others by way of infections. It's just help them be supported in kind of the middle part of the care till like recovery and continuing after, because those pieces still tend to need a lot more support and also trust and faith that they're going to, return back to the way they were before. So I have found it extremely is supportive in the patients that haven't used it for the emotional support ones.
It was kind of funny after talking with Dr. Tracey and Dr. Jaquel last week, and they both highlighted the emotional program. And as much as I use Nikki, I went, oh, I better be doing more of the emotional program. So thank you for that. So thank you, Dr. Jaquel, for being part of the program
Thank you.
tonight. If people have questions for Dr. Jaquel, please put those in the Q&A, and we will get to some of those at the end of our conversation. Now we're going to hear directly from the We Are Nikki team about their recent work to create the vagus nerve program. So welcome, Miriam, from the We Are Nikki team.
Let me just fix my screen quickly.
Oh my
I
goodness.
don't know why it does
You look amazing.
that. There it is.
There you are. Much better. So talk to us a little bit about the catalyst for the creation of the vagus nerve program that recently launched. Like, why did the We Are Nikki team feel the need to create it? And then walk us through a little bit of the pre-launch testing process that you all had with many users. What kind of feedback did you get on the program? And then maybe touch on when during the day is the program best utilized?
Oh, for sure. So thank you guys so much. The inspiration behind the vagus nerve program came from what we were witnessing firsthand in the Lyme and chronic illness communities. So many individuals, especially those living with chronic Lyme, were doing everything they could to support their healing. They were showing up, trying different treatments, making lifestyle changes, and yet they weren't seeing progress they deserved. What actually became clear to us was that many of these people were still trapped in survival mode, stuck in a constant state of fight or flight. And in that state, true healing simply can't happen. The body needs to feel safe in order to rest, reset, and to begin repair, which is a lot what Dr. Tracey Stroup talked about. So that became our focus. How can we use frequency to help regulate the nervous system and stimulate the vagus nerve in a safe, non-invasive way? That's where the program began. So I remember it was like a glimpse of an idea, like almost a year ago. So before launching it publicly, we invited a small group of users to be part of the pre-launch test. We call them our frequency squad. They're much beloved members of our community. These members of our Nikki community are dealing with a range of challenges. So insomnia, anxiety, chronic pain, chronic Lyme. And what we heard back was very encouraging. And so some of the users reported feeling calmer in the evenings, waking up more refreshed, and in some cases, even seeing improvements in things like blood pressure and sleep regularity. One user shared that for the first time, they woke up feeling like their body had truly rested. Another told us the vagus nerve program was what finally helped him turn the corner in his Lyme recovery, like something had shifted and his body could finally begin to let go and heal. Hearing this kind of feedback affirmed what we've long believed, and that supporting and regulating the nervous system is a vital part of healing. In terms of the timing, we designed the program to be used primarily in the evening or at night. That's when the body is naturally trying to shift into recovery and parasympathetic mode. Some people wear it in the hours leading up to bedtime, others wear it overnight. The goal is to support deep rest and nervous system repair. What we've seen so far is less nighttime waking, improved sleep quality, and improved sense of calm that carries into the day. And so if you're interested in being one of our frequency squad members, we will send out an email to everyone that is registered and open up to be part of our team. And it's really cool because it's a way to have outside opinions and about changing the future of Nikki. So it's very exciting.
Amazing. Thanks, Miriam. So one of the things, maybe just to make it seem a little more attainable and hopeful, and I agree with what Miriam said with, using the vagus nerve to help the body feel safe. I think the good news is we don't necessarily have to feel completely safe to move in the direction of healing. My mentor, Dr. Neil Nathan, said, and I love what he said, we just need to feel safer. So if safe seems difficult because of things that you've been through in your life or living in the world that we all live in, safe is not necessarily the prerequisite for healing, but safer is really the goal. And I think that's part of what the We Are Nikki team was attempting to do with this vagus nerve program, is to really calm the nervous system and help the body to move into more of a healing state. So Thank you so much. And if you have any questions for Miriam, please feel free to put those in the Q&A as well. And now we're going to talk to a few users about the NICI. Some of them have used the vagus nerve program, some have not. So we have a good mix of people that we're going to talk to. And first, we're going to talk to Anne, who's had really remarkable responses to her use of the NICI. So Anne, wondering if you can talk to us about your Lyme journey. How long had you been dealing with Lyme disease? And why do you say that it's important for people to both have hope, but also to not ignore the signals that their body is sending and to instead listen to what our bodies are telling us? All right.
Hello. Thank you
Hello.
so much for having me. Such a pleasure to be here today. Um, you asked a lot of questions. So yes, I hope I answer them in the order you want. I
You
would like
you
to
just
start.
you just do you. If you don't have to
Okay,
answer them in the order I
great.
asked, totally fine.
But I just want to say how amazing this is. So everybody who's been on, like I just feel so heard and so seen. And just like everybody's speaking my language, which is a very rare thing to have happen. So I'm just super grateful for the opportunity to be here and to learn from others and to hear from others. So thank you. I would say my journey with Lyme has been long. It's been a 30-year journey, been a lot of up and downs. I learned about the NICI device last fall and purchased it to start my program in December. I had to start over once, had a lot of ups and downs with it, quite frankly. I herxed on the first day. It was really rough and had a lot of pretty crazy side effects, but finally made it through and finished early February. And it was probably about all in about 90 days in where I, for the first time in 30 years, have felt good. And it was really fascinating to me. I kind of was cautiously optimistic about what I was feeling in my body because I think for people that have chronic illness, you learn to just be really open-handed with days where you feel a little bit better than you might have the day before. You don't want to get too ahead of yourself. And so I continued to feel good, even on full moon days and even on major weather shift days. And so that was initially why I had reached out to the NICI team. I wanted to share my story with them to let them know that there's stuff that this device does that nothing else had done for me. I've done hundreds of protocols over the years. I've seen probably over 50 doctors and practitioners over the years. And I can honestly say for me, this device and wearing it every day has been game changing. I still have my days where it's a little up and down. I still have new layers of things happening within my body, but overall, I appreciated Dr. Tracey talking about healing is not linear because that is something I've had to train myself to think about. That nope, you know what, it's not linear, and this is just a new opportunity to heal your body with whatever is coming out. And so I've been really grateful for this. And like I said, it's the only thing that's helped me significantly and actually has been durable, I would say. You know, I've had bouts over the years where I'd feel a little bit better for maybe a small season of time, but I've never had anything where I feel this good. And so much so that quite a few people in my life, when they ask me how I'm feeling and I say I feel great, they have said, I've never heard you say that before.
Wow. Wow. So the We Are Nikki team, I think, is very transparent, and you touched on this, but I wanted to just maybe have you talk a little bit more about, was your Nikki experience smooth sailing? How significant were your Herxheimer reactions? Did you have to kind of then adapt things a bit? And then which programs are you finding the most helpful in your own recovery?
Yeah, great question. So, like I said, the very first day I ran the Lyme daily, I had a Herxheimer effect, which was, on one hand, really discouraging, and also on the other hand, really encouraging, because I was like, this is actually doing something. And I could feel it in my body. I'm very sensitive to my body. I've learned over the years the importance of learning to listen to my body, which I think is I think we can all do that. And I think most of us don't listen to our bodies. And so I could tell that although my side effects were pretty intense, I had a lot of vomiting. I felt like I was going to throw up every day. I had brain fog. I could feel my brain swollen. I had a lot of skin side effects. I had a lot of pain, a lot of jolting and vibration in my body, almost like electrical currents running through my body, which wasn't a new symptom for me. I've had that with Lyme, almost like I could feel the spirochetes burrowing into my bones. It literally felt like a war was going on in my body. That's probably the best way I can describe it. I had a lot of trembling and shaking um, when I would really be going through a tough Herxheimer. That was one of the biggest things where there were times I couldn't get my body to stop shaking. So it was intense, like I said, I had to stop once because it was too much. And I was pretty discouraged that first time that I had to start over, but then I just remembered it's not wasted. So I gave myself a couple days, I started over again. And then by the time I made it to day 30, I really thought I was done. I was like, I made it. This is amazing. And then I learned I had to keep going. So it was probably about 40 days from there, I think, that the light switch went off in my body and I just started to feel really good. And so from that, when I initially got the wearable device, I stuck to what their customer service team said. Do not frequency hop. I wanted to frequency hop because you have all these frequencies that you want to play around with, but I also knew that I didn't want to set myself back further. So I just stuck to the Lyme Daily, and it was about a month to maybe 40 days after, well, when I started feeling good. So about 40 days after, that's when I thought, okay, I'm going to trying some other frequencies. So I would add in, when I woke up in the morning, I would add morning. And then the next day I added morning, and then I added energy. And then after that, I looked into, okay, I'm doing good with those. I'm not having any negative side effects. My body's still feeling strong. So I started adding in gut health. I know the Lyme Daily has the gut health, but I started adding in the gut health, and I would run that for about 2 hours. And then I would run detox immediately after it. I tried playing around with inflammation. I tried playing around with sleep. For me, the sleep one actually has an opposite effect for me. So I don't use the sleep, but I also am a really good sleeper. So I think maybe that's why my body just doesn't need it. So I've played around with a lot of them. There's still some that I have not tried yet. I haven't tried the mold or the bacteria yet. But speaking about the emotional part, so both doctors talked about this. I did not realize that I'd have this like grief after I started feeling better. And so I had pretty significant grief. And I was like, what is this all about? Like, I want to I want to be grateful, but what's the grief about? And so I started playing with the stress and anxiety and the emotional frequencies as well. And I've noticed that both of those are helping significantly just with the emotional aspect of things.
Amazing. Yeah, as much of a challenge as it was for you to go through that Herxheimer response, in some ways, maybe that also was what then kept you going with the technology, because you then had the sense of like, wow, this is actually really doing something. For people listening, it's not super commonly the case that people have as strong of a symptom flare with the device, but I'm so happy to hear that you're doing better, that you've gotten past that, and that it sounds like things have really significantly shifted for you. I remember when we talked before, you commented that you always felt like you were swimming upstream and that every day was a battle, and that is not your current experience. So to me, that's huge.
Yeah, it's amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ann. Appreciate that. All right, so now we're going to hear from David, and I understand that David has been busy doing some Lyme advocacy work for all of us, that he was recently in Washington, D.C., part of the testifying around Lyme disease. So David, wondering if you can just tell us a little about that experience and some of the advocacy work that you're doing.
Yes. So I went to Washington, D.C. last week. We talked, me and my family went, and my son, and we talked with a lot of the senators. We went into the senator's office, talked to people, and we had some meetings with them. And then I went there to support Center for Lyme Action. They were requesting funds and stuff for research. I actually personally went, I supported them, but I personally went on a different mission. I went down there just strictly to advocate for the people. That's my mission in life. I run the men's support group through Project Lyme, and I work with Tick-Borne Foundation and other organizations. But me and my son, he's 6 years old, and we made these Lyme disease and signs, and we walked 7 miles around the city just advocating. There wasn't a protest or anything. That's just what we did. I just felt very compelled to do it. And I went down there with the mission to teach people about Lyme disease and mental health. And I really wanted to thank Dr. Tracey and Dr. Jaquel, because they reminded me today what I'm doing here and why I'm doing it. Because just today I got a message from somebody arguing with me that I need to stop advocating for mental health if I'm doing Lyme disease, because they're two totally separate things. And people are focusing on their physical healing. And it was a back and forth. I was trying to explain to them what mental health means. And, but they just reminded me, how important mind, body, soul, and spirit is in healing. And that's what I advocate. Mental health doesn't mean bipolar disorder or something like that. It means brain health. And this is why the vagus nerve thing was so important for me to get in with this, because it's so crucial to healing, is the mental part, the brain health.
Totally agree with you. So let's then extend on that. So I think we can probably, many of us here, relate to the journey of Bartonella, Babesia, the impact they have on mental health. So talk to us a little bit about how the Nikki's been helpful for you in that realm. And then, as I understand, you were part of the vagus nerve frequency squad team. So what's your experience with the vagus nerve program?
The vagus nerve program, I was part of the trial, and the first night it was a little weird for me, but by the second night it was actually it was a very strange feeling. I was just calm, very, very calm, and serene. Sleeping was very nice. I had no issues with it. I really liked it. Vagus nerve and polyvagal, all that stuff is very important to me because I had childhood trauma. So with that, being stuck in the fight flight is, your body doesn't want to heal because I think it was Dr. Tracey said, you're constantly in that stuck state and your body's trying to keep you out of that. You're being attacked by a dinosaur, where you're not being attacked by a dinosaur, So it was very important to me to work on that.
Excellent. Thank you so much, David, for sharing your experience, and thank you for the advocacy work that you're doing. And I certainly am happy to hear that you're raising awareness around how these infections, these vector-borne infections, can and do impact our mental health. So thank you so much for doing that.
Thanks, Scott.
There is a comment that I just wanted to share here since we just talked about the vagus nerve program. Someone said, the vagus nerve program has made such a difference in my life. I sleep now, which gives me more energy daily. So that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that, Diana. Appreciate that. Now we're going to talk with Jill. And as I understand, Jill had a tick bite 17 years ago. She had several more tick bites subsequent to that. And believe it or not, folks, she still likes to spend time in her garden. So she's also a brave soul. She then got COVID twice, which kind of was the perfect storm where she ultimately became that sensitive patient that was unable to tolerate many of the things that she needed to get well. So wondering, Jill, if you can maybe talk with us first about kind of having a focus on the nervous system, on brain retraining, and how that helped you to move forward and start to see some initial improvements.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me here. I'm very excited about this, and I've had a lot of aha moments. I've loved everything that everyone's talked about, and it's been really eye-opening to see that there are people who really care about this, because sometimes you just see so many lack empathy and care for people with Lyme disease. So thank you so much for this. I can't wait to share it with so many people. But yeah, I was so stuck in a space of helplessness, hopelessness, severe depression, anger, because the doctors couldn't help me. The medicine almost killed me. I had mast cell, histamine, and nobody knew what was wrong with me. And they kind of were like, we don't know what to do with you. So I started to look up, I'm like, you know, I need to change my mindset. So I started to do some research, of course, on YouTube University, for Lyme recoveries. And one of the first things that came up was the mind retraining and nervous system regulation. And I said, that's it. I'm in severe fight or flight. I'm terrified that I'm going to die. I thought I was going to have to plan my funeral, and my poor children were going to have to experience that. That's how sick I was. And so that's the first glimmer of hope I had. And I immediately started to be like, you know what? I release that. I give it to God. I'm no longer going to be in bondage to constantly looking up symptoms, constantly looking for another supplement, not even able to take it anyway. I would buy things, I would try it, have a bad reaction, and I'd feel hopeless again. So I stopped all treatments and I just focused on that. And I immediately had a sense of peace come over me that no matter what happened, I was going to be okay. That was hard to get to that point.
No, but that's I mean, that's a huge step in the whole healing process. So talk to us then a little bit about, at that point, you started some of the brain retraining, some of the nervous system work. And then, as I remember, you went online looking for Lyme recovery stories, and that's how you found the Nikki. So tell us a little about your experience with the Nikki, how that further shifted you in the direction of health. How long did it take before the switch had really flipped and you could see that there were some benefits? What was your aha moment? And what were some of the improvements that you experienced? Some of them were also pretty impressive with your story, so I'm excited for people to hear that.
Hear it. So I was determined every day I would turn YouTube on and I would just go through every positive story that I could find. And one day I came across the YouTube channel called Tick Chicks, and Steven was on. And I saw it, my mouth hit the floor, and I immediately understood what they were talking about. Years prior, I learned about Nikola Tesla, and Nikola Tesla talked about how the healing of the future would be through frequency. And so I already had known that. So when they were talking about it, I said, that's mine. That's going to help me. I've got to get it. However, it's like, you know, spending all the money for treatments and doctors. I'm still paying on doctor's bills. And so it's kind of like you think to yourself, well, you know, I don't know if it's going to work. You have all these really negative thoughts coming in, which I feel like are those little demons in there saying they don't want you to have the Nikki because it's going to save your life. But my husband said, look, you don't have anything to lose. They told you that you could send it back if you were unhappy with it for a full refund. And if you don't get it, you're still going to have to go to the doctors all the time. And we have catastrophic insurance. So it's like $5,000 out of pocket every January comes around. So he's like, the Nikki's way cheaper than that. So let's go with Nikki first. So I did. I got it. And it was one of the happiest days that I'd had in years. And I hate to get emotional about it, but I really thought I was going to die. So I'm really grateful for the Nikki company and what it's done for me. I noticed a difference immediately, and unlike Anne, I mean that's hard to go through that. I really didn't have very much herx. I kind of had like creepy crawlies a little bit where I was like a little like agitated, but I just stuck with it. And I was just like, I'm not going to even pay attention to it. I'm going to use my mind training and pretend it doesn't exist. I'm going to, and the first thing I have been suffering with at the time was severe pain, head to toe, primarily in the joints, my shoulder and my knee. They were just so inflamed, and I couldn't even extend my knee all the way. So I was always walking with it bent, so I was limping all the time. The pain was 10 out of 10 every minute of every day. There was just no relief. And because my stomach was so sensitive, I couldn't take any anti-inflammatories. I could take some Tylenol, but I mean, everybody knows about Tylenol. I mean, it's not gonna, maybe for some not even do anything, but because I wasn't able to take medications, that's all I had. I was able to tolerate the over-the-counter Tylenol. So that's the only form of pain relief that I had, which was really small. And I noticed a difference instantly within days. And I'll never forget as long as I live. I want to say it was like maybe 2 weeks later, I was laying in bed and I was stretching, and I noticed my leg was flat to the bed and not bent, and it didn't hurt.
Wow.
And I said, Lord, hallelujah, we're getting somewhere. This is really working. And I know it was the Nikki. I know it was nothing else, because it had been like that for years and no improvements. I went to physical therapy. I did the red light therapy. I did it all. And nothing. I did like special stretches to try to get the angle to like flatten out. Nothing would really work. And I literally had like a party. I was like, this is the most amazing thing. I was just beyond excited.
That's huge. No, I definitely would be as well. I also remember that you noticed some improvements with your blood pressure and maybe some POTS related symptoms, which are all too common these days. So amazing story of recovery. And thank you so much, Jill, for being here to share with everyone.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so now we're going to do a short panel Q&A. So if the panelists would like to come back on, that would be great. Just please remember to mute yourself if you're not speaking so we don't have any background noise. So there is a question here about what about EMF emissions from the device being constantly worn? So one of the great things that the We Are Nikki team did was to have an airplane mode or a setting where you can turn the Bluetooth off. So you only need to turn the Bluetooth on in the rare case that you want to connect to the app on your phone to add some additional programs to it. So I have mine running now and the Bluetooth is turned off. So they have considered that as part of the development process. There is a question here about, would it be best to start with the vagus nerve program if the nervous system is stuck in sympathetic mode all of the time? So anyone that wants to answer that question, would we think about using the vagus nerve program first? Would we think more about using the Lyme program because some of those infections could also be impacting the vagus nerve? Would you do both? Miriam, if you have any comments, or Dr. Tracey or Dr. Jaquel, any thoughts on the best way to use that?
I can give an opinion on it.
Sure.
So,
yeah, great.
and I kind of answered this on a blood work question that's in the Q&A. There's a kill mentality when it comes to chronic disease, and then there's a fill mentality. And honestly, I would like to cycle. If it were someone in my care, I would probably recommend like use the Lyme daily and then intermittently use the vagus within that, so that you have the ability to go after the infectious components, but also give a rest to the sympathetic nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system. I'm a big proponent of, even with supplement protocols, we go after whatever the instigator is, and then we regenerate the body. We help with ATP production, mitochondrial biogenesis, all the things. And you flip-flop because you need that recovery point. If the body is not able to, if it's not able to detoxify, if it's not able to create new and healthy cells, it's all for nothing. I mean, if we look at chemotherapy, that's a drastic kill mentality. It goes after, goes after. What we have to remember is when we get an infection of any kind, it's infecting our own cells. And so when we're going after the infection, there's two layers. One is what's ever in the blood, two is what's within the cells. And if we can take out that infection, you still have that senescent cell or that cell that has been affected by the infection. You know, it's not as healthy as it once was. It doesn't have the integrity of the membrane as it did. It doesn't have the ability to regenerate itself. So it becomes what I call a zombie cell. It can't die, but it can't recover. So really important that we don't get stuck just in the kill mentality, that we're looking at filling the body how we need, whether that's emotional, mental, or even nutrient wise, and to kind of cycle those protocols. I think that's probably the best way I would use it. I don't know if anybody else wants to answer that.
Yeah, and Miriam, and thanks, Dr. Tracey. Miriam, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the way the Lyme program works is that it has detox, Lyme, and is it still stress and anxiety that's part of that initial process as well?
Yeah, so we've had a lot of people talk about, we have Anne, we have Jill, we have David, we have Lene, talk about their use of the Lyme Daily program. And so sometimes it's hard to understand how the program fully works. And so what we've done is the Lyme program is one program, you hit play, and then in the background, it slowly progresses over 30 days. And so day one, you're going to get 1 minute of detox. Day two, you're going to get your Lyme Complete. Day one, you get 1 minute detox, 1 minute Lyme Complete, 60 minutes of stress and anxiety. Then day two, you'll get 2 minutes detox, 2 minutes Lyme Complete, 60 minutes of stress and anxiety. And you'll slowly progress until you get to the recommended run time over 30 days. And so by day 30, you're up to 30 minutes detox, 30 minutes Lyme Complete, 30 minutes stress and anxiety. And so that's why sometimes it's a slow progression. So we're slowly introducing the programs to your body. And so, for example, like Lyme Complete, Lyme Complete deals with Lyme, co-infections, parasites, viruses, bacteria, fungals, mold, Epstein-Barr, Babesia, Bartonella, Borrelia. That was a lot of bees in there. And so what we've done, and so when Anne talked about having to restart, so sometimes, you're wearing the Lyme program, you'll get to day 15, which is, I've been here 4 years. That's as far as I can make it without having really bad hercs. And then what will happen is customers will reach out, be like, I'm not feeling great. We'll be like, you know what, restart, and then work your day one back up again. And it is not going backwards. It's listening to your body with what your body needs to move forward. And, like we heard from the guest, is it's not a race. We're taking our time, and we really need to listen to our bodies. And, it's interesting because between Anne, Jill, and David, they each had a very different Lyme journey with the Nikki and very different experiences. So it just shows like not everybody's the same. Lyme doesn't fit in the same box as everybody, as we all know.
Yeah. So I think you could use the vagus nerve program earlier in the process, but at the same time, that nervous system calming stress anxiety has been part of the whole Lyme program process for a while. So there is an aspect of that that's already part of what's been available even before this program. There is a question here. When you buy the Nikki, does it come with a protocol? How do you know what to do? Is it all trial and error? So when you buy the hardware, then you either get the wellness program or the Lyme program. And then you can see on the website what frequency programs are part of wellness versus Lyme, and then make a decision around which of those might fit best for you. There was a question as well related to that around if you bought wellness now, can you buy the Lyme program later, or do you need to buy all at once? My understanding, Miriam, is that you can buy Lyme later.
Yes.
Yep. So we're good with
you can
that
buy any
one.
of the programs later. And so right now we have the vagus nerve available for a limited time. And yeah, you don't need to buy it all at once. And in terms of the protocols, the Lyme Daily is the only one that runs in a unique way. The other ones, a lot of people, I know David has a specific program he runs through with his programs, and shared hers. I find as you go through the journey with Nikki and the Lyme programs particularly, you kind of find your own routine. And if there's somebody who's like, every day I ask my body, which program do I need today, and then she'll run the gut health or the histamine or emotion. And yeah, the emotion one is one that I also thought it didn't really affect me until I stopped wearing it for 5 days, and a coworker told me to kindly remind me to put it back on. So
Okay.
yeah, so it works.
So there's a question here about if someone, and I'm going to steer away from using brand names of other products, just since we're focused here on Nikki, but is it redundant to get the vagus nerve frequency on the Nikki if I'm already using another device that stimulates the vagus nerve? Be happy to hear from any of our panelists on that. My thought process would be humming is good, singing is good, gargling is good, that there's no reason why we couldn't use multiple different modalities that were working with the vagus nerve, and then everyone's going to be a little different in terms of how they respond to one or the other or the combination. But to me, it doesn't seem, if you're using some other tool, it doesn't seem like you couldn't still use the Nikki. Does anyone agree or disagree with that thought
No,
process?
it wouldn't hurt. I think it's a different delivery system, so it would be similar to humming because it's a vibration versus a frequency.
Okay, excellent. Let's see. I have the Wave one, used it several times. Have had Lyme since 10 years old, now 67 years young. I'm a naturopath as well and was fully diagnosed in 1995. I want to purchase the Nikki, but want to better understand what's the difference. I'm a little confused. I think I actually did a interview with Stephen and Nikki, kind of when that first rolled out, where we talked about some of the differences. But Miriam, do you want to highlight maybe the difference for people that already have the Wave one, why they might want to consider the Nikki?
For sure. So as we know, the world has changed, technology has changed. Wave one, it's beloved to many people still. Many people still love their Wave ones. I still love my Wave one. I also love my Nikki. The Wave one connects to a desktop computer, and less and less people have the desktop computer. The Nikki, you use a mobile device to operate the Nikki. So the Nikki is obviously smaller. You can control the Nikki from the interface, which is awesome. If you are throughout the day, you want stress and anxiety, you hit the 3 o'clock slump, you want to use your energy, you can. What I like about the Wave one is you have the ability to roll back the Lyme program. So you can restart, whereas the Nikki, you have to factory restore, reconnect to the app, and then get your program again. Whereas with the Wave one still has a little bit of flexibility of the brightness of the lights, restarting back at the day one if you wanted to, as well as there's 2 different programs on the Wave one, which is the Lyme program originally started as a 3-month progression, and we've narrowed it down to 30 days now with the Nikki. And then also if you have a Wave one, you can upgrade to the Nikki with just the cost of the hardware of the Nikki for $299. You just have to email us and we can arrange to send you a manual invoice. The benefit of Nikki over the Wave one currently is May of last year. So last year for Lyme Awareness Month, the Wave one has 1 Lyme program. The Nikki Lyme program now consists of 10 specific Lyme programs, which is a very big upgrade from the Wave one. So I'll just run through those programs for anyone watching that doesn't know. So you get the Lyme Daily, which is our standard Lyme progression program that we've had for years and years. You get bacteria, you get detox, emotion, gut health, histamine, Lyme sleep, mold, inflammation, and then stress. And so you get like 9 more extra programs related to Lyme on the Nikki over the one that comes standard with the Wave one.
And so those programs that you just mentioned for the Nikki, those are not available on the Wave one, correct?
No.
And for people that are interested in the vagus nerve program, that is also only available on the Nikki.
Correct.
And more or less any future program that the team comes out with is going to be limited to the Nikki as well, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
We do still support our Wave one owners. So we still do battery replacements, straps. We still support the technology and the device itself. It's just all the new programs going forward as of May of last year will all be focused on the Nikki.
Let's see. Here's somebody saying that they're excited to upgrade to the Nikki. So welcome and hi, Sue. Someone said, I tend to forget I have the Nikki on and forget to change the program. Any suggestions? I mean, that's interesting. I guess you could set a timer on your phone or something along those lines. And then some of the programs are pretty lengthy. So maybe by the time you've forgotten, you've already, done a 4 or 8 hour program. But I don't know, Miriam, has that question come up much for you all?
It actually does come up. And well, for me, I know I wear the stress and anxiety almost 24/7, same with allergies. I can usually feel when the programs have turned off, especially allergies, because I'll all of a sudden get my allergy symptoms again.
Yeah.
It's great that you forget it's on, which is what we want. Yeah, no, the setting the timers or just a reminder on your phone is what a lot of people will actually do.
Okay, great. We're going to go just a few more minutes with questions, and then we'll try to make sure we wrap up within the next 10 minutes, because I'm sure many of you have other things you'd like to get to. Interesting question. Does the Lyme Daily or the Lyme Frequency Program, the things that you talked about, does it also include something to support energy function, or is that only included within wellness? I don't see anything on the list. So unless it's embedded in another program, maybe that's a wonderful piece of feedback for the team.
Yeah, that is.
So thank you to that
frequency
astute.
squad. Join the
Yeah.
frequency squad.
Yeah, that's fantastic there. Okay, few more questions and then we'll wrap up here. Is there a different code for purchasing additional programs if you already have the watch? Miriam, I don't know if the discount code that we're going to share, if somebody later comes back and they already have the hardware and they buy the Lyme piece, can they still use the same code, or is that on?
Absolutely. So
Okay.
the code that Scott's going to share, that can be used at any time. How our website is set up is it will change in the next couple months, but right now you are unable to go and purchase an individual program, as in you can purchase the vagus nerve, no problem. But the wellness and the Lyme, because we have had people purchase and not own a Nikki. So what will happen is you just can't buy those individually on the website, but email us at hello@wearenikki. Let us know Scott's code. We will apply the discount and then send you a manual invoice to finish your transaction. So that's just our process for now. It is changing in the near future. But yeah, you can purchase the programs on their own and apply your 10% discount.
Do you have any experience or feedback from users running the mold frequency while still living in mold? And before I maybe let Miriam comment, I'm just going to say
that's a Scott question.
Well, I'm just going to say that I don't think anyone intends for the Nikki to mean that you're going to be optimally well if you're living in an environment that is significantly burdened by mold and mycotoxins. So just from my perspective, we need the environment around us to support the healing process. But any feedback from Dr. Tracey, Dr. Jaquel, Miriam, anyone that's using the mold frequency that you have gotten some comments from?
I had my one client who has ALS use it, and it, I mean, I do believe personally that it's what triggered his ALS. He did and was tested for underlying Lyme that came back positive. No issues up until he remodeled a house and boom. So he did run it for a few days. And I think, I don't want to say it was rough for him. So had him back it down, spread it out. And that is where, I go with, if you're herxing too hard, back it down a little bit. We can support that. We can spread it out. So just, I would say go gently, maybe use inflammation first. Maybe use something a little bit more gentle. For him, he was already doing a Lyme detox in a physical stance, supplements, things like that. And then he added that. And I was like, probably too much. So I think he probably just had too much going on. But somebody was talking about program hopping. And, just to simplify this, because when I came into Nikki, I kind of felt like I'm looking at the chat and I feel what they feel. There's so many programs, there's so much information. Here's just an easy way to simplify it. Each of the suites, you just choose one, and within the suites, there are different frequency sets that you can run. you do get a course on how to use these sets when you get your watch. So don't worry about all these questions because they're taken care of with all the guides that are given to you once you receive it. You get an app and it's very simple after you get it. So just to put a little bit of peace of mind to some of the questions popping up, because it is a lot of information, especially for somebody that's dealing with chronic illness. It's a lot to take in and process. So they do make it very simple. Once you get your watch, everything is kind of a 1, 2, 3, and the programs are built in, and it's simplified. And maybe Miriam, you can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, no, I think that was very, very good. But that kind of builds on the next question, which is when dealing with mold and Lyme and co-infections, where do you start? So I think the progression that Miriam talked about earlier, which does include some detoxification support, as well as Lyme and co-infections, as well as stress and anxiety, that generally would be the place that it would be suggested to start. And yes, we're getting very close to the end, so I will give you guys the discount code here in just a moment. Let me see if there's any other questions that we want to get to. Some of these questions are really good and we're not going to get to all of them, so feel free to reach out to the We Are Nikki team if you have questions that we're not getting to. What's the difference between the vagus nerve frequency program and stress and anxiety in Lyme Daily? I think Miriam, the vagus nerve one was just really more targeted specifically at the vagus nerve, correct? Rather than the other being a little bit more focused on anxiety. Can you talk about the differentiation between those two?
Yeah, they're all those programs are very different from each other. And so Lyme Daily obviously consists of the Detox, Lyme Complete, and the stress and anxiety. The stress and anxiety is in the Lyme program just to help calm your system down again. And then you can also wear the stress and anxiety on its own, which is a fantastic program. Vagus nerve is focused on your vagus nerve. And it's a gentle program to just kind of like while you're sleeping, wear it while you sleep. And so Lyme, like we heard Anne's story with Lyme, we've heard David's story with the vagus nerve. And so I would use them. Like I would probably do, if I had the choice between vagus nerve, Lyme Daily, and stress and anxiety, I could not wear all three of those in the same day. But I would focus one or the other. So it would either be focus on the Lyme or focus on your vagus nerve. And then maybe after you've done those, put the stress and anxiety, kind of what's Dr. Tracey mentioned a little bit earlier, but they're three very different, distinct programs addressing three different things.
Excellent. So I think that's as much time as we're going to have for Q&A. I think Miriam and the team will go back and look at some of the other questions as well, but feel free to reach out to them if you do still have some questions that you'd like to get answered. So with that, we talked at the beginning about doing a drawing. And so we're going to do the drawing now, which is for the Nikki Lyme and the vagus nerve program. So that's a $1,500 value. And the winner for the drawing today is going to be Mary Gallagher. So congratulations, Mary. I think, Miriam, will you all reach out to Mary, or should she contact you, or how's she going to get that?
We'll reach out to Mary. We have her email.
Okay, beautiful. Again, congratulations, Mary. That's very exciting. So thanks for being here. So for everyone that made it to this point in our conversation, we do have a couple of special offers to share with you. The first is that for those that purchase Nikki Lyme or Nikki Wellness, which is the device itself, plus one of those two program sets in the month of May, you'll also get the vagus nerve program complimentary. That's normally a $198 value. And then for those who want to purchase the vagus nerve program separately, if you already have a device, there is a 50% off opportunity through the end of May as well. So it would be $99. And then for anyone participating in tonight's event, there's also a discount code. So 10% off of the Nikki wearable device, the Nikki Lyme, the Nikki Wellness. That code is just Better Health, all one word, and it's on the screen there as well. So you can grab that. And we do want to also remind everyone that the We Are Nikki team has a generous return policy of 30 days from the date of delivery. So that includes the hardware and the frequency programs. And you can learn more about that on their website at wearenikki.com. Again, Better Health is the code for 10% off on either the device, Nikki Lyme, Nikki Wellness. That's only if you purchase it through wearenikki.com. And it was a wonderful honor for me to be here with all of you. Our amazing panel was incredible, wonderful to hear from and learn from Dr. Tracey and Dr. Jaquel. Those of you that are using Anne, David, Jill, and Lene, using the device and sharing your experiences, those were just incredible. So thank you to everyone who shared today. And we appreciate all of you that participated in the event. Again, to learn more, wearenikki.com. And just want to thank all of you for being part of our Lyme Recovery Event. And be well, everyone. Here is to your recovery, and have a wonderful evening. Good night.
The views, information, and opinions expressed in this content are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Freemedica. Freemedica Technologies, Inc. and its employees are not responsible, nor verifies accuracy any of the information contained in the following content. The primary purpose of this content is to educate and inform. This content does not constitute medical or other professional advice or services.